Hello and welcome to another episode of In the Trenches with Gang Green. I'm your host, Bubbs. Today is Saturday, December 21st, and we are just a little over 24 hours away from the New York Jets Week 16 matchup against the Los Angeles Rams out at MetLife Stadium. Today, as always, we're going to break down all angles of this matchup as the Jets hit the home stretch. Final 3 games of the season. They are back at home in this one, and it is going to be a cold one out there tomorrow afternoon at MetLife Stadium. As always, before we get into the meat and potatoes of this matchup, let's check out our podcast partners, starting with our friends over at BetUS. Let's take a look at the odds for this one tomorrow afternoon out at MetLife. The New York Jets come into this one as home underdogs. The Rams come into this one 3-point favorites, minus 120 on the spread. Jets at +3, even spread. Rams minus 180 on the money line. Jets at +155 on the money line. And the total for this one is set at 46.5. If you want to get on this action or any other sports betting action, use my link in the description of this video to get a 125% sign up bonus on your first 3 deposits up to $2,000. Also, our friends over at SeatGeek. If you're looking for last minute tickets to tomorrow's game, if you're a Rams fan looking to catch your team on the road and you're a first-time SeatGeek buyer, use my promo code BUBSONSports for $20 off your first purchase at SeatGeek. And you know the drill. This isn't just sports. This isn't just the NFL. This isn't just the Jets. Plays, concerts, shows, you name it. SeatGeek has it. Look for the green dots. Those are the good deals. Bubs on Sports at checkout for $20 off your first purchase. And also our friends at Huga House. If you're looking for any last-minute gift ideas, check out their awesome selection of hats. And at checkout, use promo code BUBS for 15% off your hat and then 30% off your next hat. So check out Huga House and get yourself some awesome swag. So here we are, Week 16. The New York Jets come into this game 4-10 on the season, 2-4 at home against the Rams, the road team in this one, 8-6 on the season, 4-3 on the road. Of course, a 1:00 Eastern start for this one on CBS. When you take a look at ESPN Analytics matchup predictor, well, they're giving the Rams a 51.1% chance of winning this game, and the New York Jets a 48.5% chance of winning this game. And as I mentioned to open this one just a minute ago, it's going to be cold. It is going to be freezing out there. The high for tomorrow's game is around 25 degrees, so well below freezing. You've got a warm weather Rams team coming into town and a Jets team that just spent the last 2 weeks playing against teams in Florida, with Miami, of course, in Week 14 and in Jacksonville last week and Week 15. So both of these teams will need to do some adjusting early in this game because the Jets for the last 2 games have been out in warm Florida. And of course, the Rams out there in LA. Last game on Thursday night was against the Niners. So this is definitely an adjustment for them, obviously coming across from the West Coast and playing in this type of weather. Obviously, 2 teams that are in completely different situations right now. You have a Rams team fighting for a division title, down the stretch, final 3 games, looking to clinch a playoff spot, looking to clinch a division and move into the playoffs red hot. And then you have a Jets team that is basically just looking forward to getting the season over with. I think the fans are pretty much checked out, just looking forward to what happens in the offseason. You've got a locker room that obviously there's a lot of issues, no real leadership. We don't have to rehash everything that we've talked about all year long. You had the whole bombshell report that got released on Thursday about Woody Johnson and the inept ownership and the state of the franchise and everything that's really happening inside the walls of One Jets Drive and how meddlesome he's been this year and over the last couple seasons and how this collapse has really sort of happened. just a little over, just a little under 2 years ago now. In March, it'll be 2 years in March from when Rodgers was acquired by the Jets. And to say that trade has been anywhere near what any of us expected would be an understatement. It's been the complete opposite, I think, of what any of us expected. So just counting down the days at this point, 3 games left. You got the Rams here, Bills next week on the road, and then you'll close things out against the Dolphins. Similar to how we started last week, you take a look at the draft positioning in this one. Again, 2 teams going in opposite directions. We'll read you some numbers on the Rams before we get to injury reports and in the Jets offense against the Rams defense and vice versa. You look at the Jets draft position coming into this one, of course, won last week against the Jacksonville Jaguars. So got to their 4th win on the season. Went into last week with the 7th pick in the draft, only bumped back 1 pick in the draft. So there's currently sit as of today, according to Tankathon, with the 8th overall pick in the NFL draft. Their percentages have dropped a little bit, but nothing major. 0.1% chance of getting the number 1 overall pick, slightly greater than that. So really not probably going to happen. I think the idea of getting a top 3 pick, I think, was officially kind of kissed goodbye last week with that win. If they would have lost that week and they would have lost these final 3 games, and maybe you get a win from either the Giants, Raiders, or somebody like that, the Jaguars win another game, Titans win another game, you could have definitely seen a scenario where maybe they slip into the top 3. I don't think that's going to happen at this point. When you look at their percentages to get a top 5 pick, they currently sit at 10.5%. So definitely a little bit of a drop from last week. Last week, they had a 36.1% chance of getting a top 5 pick. This week, they enter with a 10.5% chance of a top 5 pick. And their chances of a top 10 pick drop a little bit from last week, but still remain very high. 88.8% chance of the Jets, when all is said and done here, once the clock hits triple zeros on this season, to end with a pick inside the top 10. And all projections still aim that the Jets will end up with the 8th overall pick in the draft, which was the case last week and continues to be the case this week. So it feels like the Jets probably are going to be kind of in this 7 to 9 range. If they lose out, maybe they can bump up to maybe 6, maybe get to 5. But I would guess they probably go anywhere from 7 to 9, maybe 10. I don't think they completely fall out. I don't think they win this week. Spoiler alert, I don't think they beat Buffalo. Miami's the only realistic game, but even then, 5 wins still should be good enough to get you, or bad enough in a way to get you inside the top 10. So we'll see how it all plays out. But there's your weekly draft update, Jets fans. That's where we are in this season. And I just got to read you off some stuff about the Rams. This has been a Rams team that's kind of really turned their season around. Completely turned things around this year. Right at the beginning of the year, this was a Rams team that was in a very, very rough spot. 1-4 on the season. Right, Puka Nacua got hurt, week 1, so they were missing him. Him and Cooper Kupp have both missed time. But this was a team, just to show you how red hot they are and the type of season they've had. Kind of the opposite to the Jets. Not that the Jets started red hot, but they were 2-1. And even after they fired Robert Saleh, they were 2-3 going into that Bills game. They had a chance to take over the division lead that night against a 3-2 Bills team. So honestly, the Jets and the Rams, both kind of started slow, but one team turned it around. One team made the adjustments. The Jets, of course, didn't. The Rams were 1-4 through 5 weeks. They had a week 6 bye week, which feels like in a way saved their season, because since that week 6 bye week, they have been 7-2 since, including 3 straight wins, and they're currently in first in the NFC West, which is a very tight division. Them and the Seahawks coming down to the wire, 2 8-6 teams. So really crazy turnaround from a 1-4 start, looked like it might have been a lost season, to fast forward 9 games later, they've won 3 straight. The offense is balling. They're 1-4, or they're 7-2 in their last 9, and they're 8-6. And I know, of course, against the Niners wasn't a huge offensive outburst, but you look at the week prior, and they put up 44 on the Buffalo Bills. So a crazy, crazy turnaround here for the Rams. Now, injury report in this game. Jets come into this one. Michael Carter is out with a back injury. Really unfortunate, just kind of a lost year for him after he signed the contract extension in the offseason. This is a guy that the offseason really can't come soon enough for. Rest up, heal up, get what he needs to get done to his back, and get ready for next season, because this year has just been really rough. Even in the games he's played, he's had to come out often, playing very minimal snaps. So it's kind of been a lost year for him, unfortunately. A couple guys questionable in this one, 5 to be exact. Braylon Allen dealing with a back, Lecky Fotu dealing with a knee, AVT dealing with an ankle. Quinnen Williams is the big one here, dealing with a hamstring. Does seem like he will be out there tomorrow. How healthy, how much, that will be to be determined, but expect him to play tomorrow, despite nursing that hamstring injury. And as for the Rams, very odd to see this. Now, they are coming off the Thursday night mini bye, so they do have that working in their favor, some extra time off. But it's week 16. Not many times do you see a team go into a week 16 matchup with no injury designations. But that's the case here for the Rams. Nobody is on the injury report. So clean slate, full strength Rams team tomorrow out at MetLife. Let's get into the Jets offense against the Rams defense. Obviously, the big story, coming out of last week against Jacksonville, as we always do, we start with, Aaron Rodgers and, down the stretch here for him. We've talked about it a lot. We went into after the bye week, you went into this stretch of games against Seattle, against Jacksonville, against Seattle, Miami, Jacksonville, now the Rams, Bills, and Dolphins. That 6-game stretch, and was kind of sort of, I guess, a tryout, whatever you could say. Kind of many people word it in different ways to try and see maybe if he plays well down the stretch, coming out of the bye week, can finally get healthy. If he shows enough, the Jets maybe bring him back, or that's at least what some people potentially envision could happen. You look at his numbers as a whole on the season, 305 completions on 488 attempts. That's 62.5% completion percentage. He's thrown for 3,255 yards, 6.7 yards per completion, 23 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, 90.8 passer rating, and a 53.7 QBR, coming off of arguably one of his best games as a Jet last week in Jacksonville. And you look over the last 3 games, he's played a little bit better. He's definitely playing some of his best football of the season. Now, the Seattle game I do think is a little misleading. And I'm not trying to just throw unnecessary hate on what he did against Miami and what he did against Jacksonville. I'm not trying to overshadow that. But when you do look at that Seattle game, the numbers are a lot better than he played. Right? That Seattle game, not saying he was the sole reason they lost, but he misses a wide open Garrett Wilson in the end zone. And in a play later, he throws a 90-plus yard pick 6 to Leonard Williams. Awful sequence for a guy that's supposed to come in here and dominate. That was unacceptable. So I do think that was a little misleading, the whole 2 touchdowns, 1 interception game, which is all in all, yards-wise, was not a bad day for him against Seattle, but those 2 mistakes killed the Jets. Overall, though, over the last 3 games, statistically, he's been solid. 813 yards, 59.3 completion percentage, 7.5 yards per completion, 6 touchdowns to just 1 interception, 97.5 passer rating, including a 300-yard game against Miami, including the big game last week against Jacksonville, which saw him throw for 3 touchdowns, including 2 to his old pal Davante Adams. Just his second 3-touchdown game of the season, and most importantly, it resulted in a win, which at the end of the day, what those guys, when you're grading players, at the end of the day is what matters most for those guys. I still stand on the whole thing that Aaron Rodgers, I don't believe, should be back. I think it's best to move your separate ways. I just think the way he played this year, I just think where the franchise is at, where he's at, the way things have gone, I think it's just best. It'd be healthy, I think, for both sides to just move on. That's what I've said all in all. But hey, for those of you, I can't deny it. These games, as bad as the season's been, you want at least entertaining football. Even if you're going to lose, you want at least to be entertaining. You want it to be competitive. These last 2 weeks, they've been a lot more entertaining. Seeing him connect with Davante, seeing him still have that connection with Garrett Wilson, it's entertaining, at least, and You've got 3 more games of that. So for those of you that are really dug into the fact that if he plays well these next 3 games, he's back, which I still think it's up to the general manager and the head coach. As much stock for those of you that put a lot of stock in these next 3 games, well, tomorrow's another chance against this Rams defense. Which, by the way, Jets offense coming into this one, 25th ranked offense in football. They're 31st rushing offense in football, 18th passing offense, 22nd scoring offense. And the Rams defense, 25th ranked defense, 28th against the run, 19th against the pass, tied 24th in scoring defense. Some other things to look for. Garrett Wilson, of course, Davante Adams as well. 2 guys that have really kind of shown up the last couple weeks here for the Jets. Garrett Wilson, a guy that's had a monster season and continues to chase down some really major statistical milestones, which I continue to bring up here week in and week out as we get closer. When you look at Garrett on the season, 84 receptions, 933 yards, 11.1 yards per reception, 6 touchdowns on the season. He's just 12 receptions away from breaking his previous career high of 95. He's also just 16 receptions away from becoming the second Jets receiver in franchise history to have 100 receptions in a season, of course, only behind the 2015 season from Brandon Marshall. And when you look at the yards, he's just 67 yards away from his 3rd consecutive 1,000-yard season in his first 3 years. 3 years in the league, 3 1,000-yard seasons. And on top of that, he's 171 yards away from beating his previous career high of 1,103 yards, which he set in his rookie season. So everything that's gone on within this organization, all the quarterbacks, Rodgers not playing to the best of his ability this season, he still puts up major numbers. You hear the comments. There's definitely some maybe questions about his future. I'm not reading into all that stuff as of right now. I still think it ultimately comes down to who they hire and if he believes in that guy. And if that's the case, I do think he will stay here. I also think if he wants an extension and the Jets are willing to give it to him, I think both sides can come into an agreement on that. But we'll see. Hopefully it gets resolved. Hopefully he's a Jet for life, because watching Garrett Wilson is just amazing. And it's even more crazy to just look at the numbers, considering everything that's gone on around him and the fact that he is remained the one consistent, really, the entire team. One of the only consistents of the entire team. You look at Davante Adams' numbers after kind of a slow start as a Jet. Last 2 weeks, of course, 2 100-yard games. Last week, 198 for 2 touchdowns was huge. With the Jets, has had 67 receptions, or rather on the season, has had 67 receptions for 860 yards, 12.8 yards per reception, and 6 touchdowns. Davante's quietly putting together probably another 1,000-yard season. Even while after he came to the Jets, after that slow start, it looked like this was going to be statistically one of his worst years, just because of the limited amount of games he played with the Raiders, and he came to the Jets and wasn't doing a whole lot numbers wise. It looked like it was going to be one of his worst years. Fast forward a couple weeks later, and this is a guy that might finish with 8 touchdowns and over 1,000 yards, which isn't bad at all. In his time with the Jets, 49 receptions, 651 yards, 13.3 yards per receptions, and 5 of his 6 touchdowns this year have come here with New York. So Davante quietly is a couple weeks ago, you can make the case you don't want him around at all. Like, just move on from him, move on from Rodgers. But the last couple games here, he's starting to really make the case that Rodgers here, Rodgers not here. You hope the Jets can do the best they can to keep him around, because him and Garrett, the dynamic with those 2 guys is really, really dangerous. And they're fun to watch when they're connecting. They are. Something else I feel like we got to talk about, it's the Jets run game. Breece Hall is playing in this game, which I've said it many times, I'm not really for. Nothing again. I understand Breece and wanting to play and all that stuff, but you have got 3 games left. You're 4-10. There's no need to risk an injury that can affect him in the offseason, affect him going into next year, but he's out there. I think he's clearly shows, though, he's not 100%, because even last week didn't do a whole lot. The Jets run game as a whole just really has been very disappointing this year. I think a lot of it is they've been trailing in a lot of games, and they haven't been able to run it a lot. And there's even been times this year, which we've talked about a lot on the podcast, where they've run the ball well early in games and then they kind of get away from it. Either they just get away from it just because, or they get away from it because they're trailing. And they haven't had many opportunities to really get the run game going. Like, they've had 300 carries this year. That's the least in the NFL. A lot of it's because they've been trailing in a lot of games, especially late in games. They need to come back. The Jets haven't really had many blowouts they haven't had any blowouts except the Patriots game. That was it. Even last week, it came down to the wire. Most of these games this year, they've all come down to the wire where it's relied on the arm of Aaron Rodgers or the defense, not the run game, draining the clock down. So they've been disappointing. I mean, they're only averaging 89.7 yards per game. Their 300 carries is last in the NFL, 1,256 yards, which is 4.2 yards per carry, and only 8 touchdowns. So it's been disappointing. I still think even with Brees out there, you want to see a lot of Braylon Allen. You want to see a lot of Isaiah Davis. No need to feed Brees 20 times in any of these games remaining, like Saleh did in the last week of the season for a meaningless game. No need for that. So, but we'll see what we get out of Brees tomorrow. Malachi Corley, will he even be out there tomorrow? Probably not. My God, man. It's just so frustrating seeing another receiver that the Jets draft. I wrote an article on this as well. I wrote an article on the whole Malachi Corley situation. And I got so many people, coming at me saying, oh, you're being, you're jumping the gun. You're being too negative. You're all this stuff. Like, oh, give him time. And look, I'm not saying nowhere in the article or nowhere have I said Malachi Corley is already a bust or it's never going to work out. But come on now, Jets fans. We're all used to this. We've been through this before, especially recently. Just Joe Douglas alone, we've seen it twice with Denzel Mims and Elijah Moore. For some reason, when it comes to drafting a wide receiver on day 2 or day 3, the Jets just don't know how to do it. And every time they draft a wide receiver on day 2 or day 3, they a lot of times just don't either don't see the field or do see the field and just are never very good. Or they don't see the field because they're not good. The whole Malachi Corley thing is so strange to me because he's getting jumped now by practice squad guys. So it's like, now that, there was one thing when Lazard was healthy and Mike Williams, and even when they traded for Devontae Adams, it was one thing then to say, okay, he's got a lot of guys in front of him. But this wide receiver room right now is so bare. Like, obviously Mike Williams is gone. You've got it's so bare from a depth perspective. Lazard's done nothing. Lazard is useless right now. Not trying to be mean, but he is. And it's Devontae and Garrett. That's it. There's no reason Corley should not be able to get some reps out there. Like, just go out, throw him out there. You're 4-10. You got nothing to lose. Let's see what you got in the guy. At least try and display him a little bit for the next GM and the next head coach that maybe comes in here and can learn more how to use him. Like, get him on tape a little bit more. Jeez. It's just, we all know what's going to happen. We all know what's going to happen. It's not going to pan out. A new regime's going to come in here. Maybe they say we don't want anything to do it with him. But it's just crazy to me how the Jets, all that time, could say how high they were on him, and then he never plays. Never plays. So, I don't know. Are we going to see Malachi Corley tomorrow? Tomorrow's another big Olu day. Another day of Olu Fashanu playing football. Big week last week against Jacksonville. 80.5 PFF pass block grade. Highest on the team. 1 pressure allowed on 58 snaps. He's got a 77.1 PFF pass block grade since week 10. In that Seattle game, 0 pressures on 42 pass blocking snaps. So he's been excellent. Jets look like they got a dog at left tackle. So tomorrow's another day of watching Olu, which is one thing that can get you excited watching these games. Is Olu, from a young player standpoint, he leads the way. Seeing some of his one-on-one reps are a lot of they're just very promising. They warm the soul because of how much of a mess that position has been over the last couple seasons. So that's the Jets offense against the Rams defense. Will be interesting. Rams defense 28th against the run. They're allowing 135.4 yards per game on the ground. Jets, of course, 31st rushing offense, 89.7 yards per game on the ground. So, Two teams that have struggled in their respective ways. One team stopping the run, one team getting the run game going. 25 degrees tomorrow. Is this a ground and pound game? We'll see. Now for the Jets defense against the Rams offense. Jets defense comes into this one 7th total defense in the NFL, 16th against the run, 5th against the pass, 18th scoring. Rams offense, 13th total offense, 23rd against the 23rd rushing offense, 9th passing offense, and tied for 17th in scoring offense. Obviously, top 10 passing offense, and for good reason. Of course, headline led the way by Matthew Stafford. Another big year for him. Him, McVay, this whole offense, they're consistent and they're very tough to stop. And the Jets have had problems in the past, with defenses, with McVay type systems. We saw them against the Niners. Those type of systems, those type of schemes, the Jets always struggle against. When you look at Stafford this season, 309 completions on 466 attempts. That's good for a 66.3% completion percentage. 3,463 yards, 7.4 yards per completion, 19 touchdowns to just 7 interceptions, a 95.6 passer rating, and a 66.5 QBR. He's 8th in yards, 11th in touchdowns, and 6th in QBR. So remains a top 10, top 12 quarterback in the NFL, one of the most consistent quarterbacks, one of the most consistent players. And I will also just say this about Stafford. This is a guy that, of course, has been in the NFC his entire career. So just Jets fans, we just don't see him a ton. We don't talk about him a ton because he's in the NFC. He's out west now. But this is a guy that through all of his years has always been one of the more underrated quarterbacks in the NFL, especially now. He's just very consistent. Even as he's gone up there in age, continues to go out there and ball, putting his team in contention yet again, won the Super Bowl in 2021, kind of, perfects the whole McVay offense, the McVay system. They're a really fun team to watch. They're a really tough team to stop. It's going to be a big test for the Jets. And part of what makes Stafford and this Rams offense so good and so lethal, especially through the air, right? 9th ranked passing offense in football, is their 1-2 punch at wide receiver, arguably one of the most lethal 1-2 punches in the NFL with Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp. And what's crazy about these two guys is, and that's what makes this whole Rams season crazy, is they've dealt with a ton of injuries this year, especially to those two guys. And yet here they are, 8-6, leading in the NFC West and getting hot at the right time. You look at Nacua and Kupp this year. Puka Nacua has played just 9 games. Cooper Kupp has played in just 10 games. Combine those two have missed 9 games combined. That's a lot of games for two guys of that caliber to miss. And the season isn't even over yet, right? Puka Nacua missed 5 games. Cooper Kupp has missed 4 games. Nacua hurt in the first game of the season, which was a really, really tough blow, of course, for them. Part of the reason why they got off to that slow start. But even through all that, here they are, 8-6. And when you look at Puka Nacua and you look at what Cooper Kupp have done this year, and it's going to be interesting, another day tomorrow where it's going to be up to, Brandon Eccles. It's going to be up to, obviously, Quantez Stiggers as well, some of these other guys with Michael Carter out to step up and make some plays tomorrow. And I think it is big that Eccles will be back tomorrow. Sauce, of course, as well. It'll be interesting to see how they line up. But you look at Puka Nacua this year, 61 receptions, 805 yards, 13.2 yards per reception, 3 touchdowns. You look at Cooper Kupp, 63 receptions, 657 yards, 6 touchdowns, 10.4 yards per reception. Combine the two. And again, they've missed 9 games total. Kupp has played 10 of 14 games. Nacua has played 9 of the team's 14 games. Despite all that, combined, they still have 124 receptions, 1,462 yards, 11.8 yards per reception, and 9 touchdowns. 9 of Stafford's 19 touchdowns have been thrown to those two players. Just imagine if they were healthy again for an entire year, right? Puka Nacua last year, healthy rookie season, broke all sorts of records. Well over 1,400 yards, 105 receptions, massive year. And there's a good chance he finishes this season again with over 1,000 yards, even though if he stays healthy, he'll only play 12 games over these next, 3 total that he can add on to his, 9 that he's played already. So something to look tomorrow, of course, is just that dynamic duo against this Jets secondary that'll be missing Michael Carter again. You got Eccles back into the fold, so Sauce and Eccles will kind of lead the way. Stiggers more so as your third. Of course, something to look for. Just two very dynamic players. Even in the cold, a lot of these guys are more of your underneath guys that can just pick up a ton of yak, make really big plays in space once they have the ball. So something that'll be interesting. And again, these are the type of defenses that the Jets type of offenses. Geez, my words are all tangled up. Type of offenses that the Jets typically struggle with. We talk a lot about the weather. And again, I do think that Nacua and Kupp will still be big factors. But Kyren Williams, we can't go the podcast without talking about Kyren Williams. He's been a monster again this season. You look at the Rams rushing offense as a whole, it's a little overwhelming from a yards per game ranking perspective, right? 105.8 yards per game. That's 28 or 23rd in the NFL. And a big reason because of that is it's Kyren Williams, and that's it. Kyren Williams is an absolute workhorse. He's an absolute workhorse. The next closest running back to Kyren Williams is Blake Corum, who has 48 carries for 187 yards. The Rams this season only have one running back who has scored touchdowns for them. That's Kyren Williams. The other player to score a rushing touchdown is Puka Nacua. So not Ronnie Rivers, not Blake Corum. It's Puka Nacua. All 12 of the team's rushing touchdowns from a running back has come from Kyren Williams. And this Jets defense, while they've gotten better, had a little bit of a slip up last week against the run, weren't very good, another 100-plus yard game. While they have gone a little bit stronger against teams like Seattle and Indy and even Miami, they're still 16th in the NFL against the run, which is basically just average, which I think what this defense is at this point against the run is they're going to be average at best, allowing 121.1 rush yards per game. And in this cold weather, especially early on, as the Rams get kind of a feeling out process, especially if the Jets, if they take a lead early, you could see a lot of Kyren Williams tomorrow. That might be their game plan. Just force feed it with Kyren Williams. And it wouldn't be a bad idea. 280 carries on the season, 1,121 yards, 4 yards per carry, 12 touchdowns. He is an absolute workhorse. Second in the NFL in carries, fourth in yards, tied for fourth in touchdowns. A monster of a season. And he's got a really favorable matchup tomorrow. In the cold, potential game where he could see a lot of carries against a Jets defense that has struggled against the run all year, against a Jets defense that might be with at best, a banged up Quinnen Williams, who is obviously a big factor in stopping the run. Maybe Lecky Fotu's out there again, but he hasn't, barely played this year, and even the games he has played hasn't done a whole lot. He was out there against Arizona. We know how that worked out. So tomorrow could be a big Kyren Williams day. Now, Will McDonald, of course, just stat-wise, still stuck at 10 sacks. So over these next 3 games, we'll see how high or low he can go. By the way, I forgot to touch on this later. Just mentioning Olu and this Jets offensive line. The Jets offensive line will have a pretty good test tomorrow. Rams defense this season has 31 sacks. But there's a lot of young players on this defense and a lot of young players up front. You look at guys up front on defensive line. Kobe Turner, their top 3 leading sacks leaders. Kobe Turner's in his second year. He has 7. Braden Fisk is a rookie, of course, out of Florida State. He has 6. And Byron Young is in his second year. He has 6. So those 3 guys, 2 second-year players and a rookie, have combined for 19 of the team's 31 snaps. On top of that, Jared Verse, also, of course, a rookie out of Florida State, their first-round pick. He has 4.5 sacks on the season. So you throw his sack total in there as well, and those three guys, 2 rookies and 2 second-year players, have combined for 23.5 of the team's 31 sacks. So you talk about making up, filling the void for a veteran in Aaron Donald retiring. The Rams have done that. I think that also shows you how good Les needed at his job of finding talent like this year in, year out. So just crazy. But this Jets offensive line, Olu, guys like that, going up against a young group there up front, but a very good group at that. So there you have it. We've made it. Week 16, game preview, Jets, Rams. I think this one's actually, we're going to see some scoring. We've seen some scoring in the last 2 Jet games. This defense for the Jets has gotten to the point where it's so bad. And the Jets offense, they've been playing better. So I actually think we're going to get some scoring tomorrow. I think the Jets lose this game. I think the Rams win. You know, tank purposes, it's for the better here for the Jets from a tank perspective. I'll go Rams 31-23. I do think this is another competitive game for the Jets. But I think it's one of those Rams are just a better team, more well-coached. Defense isn't good enough to stop Rams offense that has Stafford, Kyron Williams, Cooper Kupp, and Puka Nacua. I don't care if it's 0 degrees out there. They're threats, and they're guys that are really good. And this Jets defense had a tough time last week stopping Mac Jones at certain points of the game. So I'll go Rams here. Big day for them, 31-23. They take care of business. We'll see. We'll see how the Rams come out, right? That Seattle game, Seattle came out sleepwalking. West Coast to East Coast. Rams after this have 2 big games to close out the year, 2 big in division games against the Cardinals and the Seahawks. So, I don't think they'll get caught looking ahead. They've also had a lot of time to prepare for this game. So they've had a lot, since that Thursday night game. So they've had more time, which I think actually benefits them. Not that you need more time to prepare for the Jets. I think teams could prepare for the Jets in one day and probably beat us. But put it simply, don't want to go on any longer. 31-23 Rams win. I think we see some offense tomorrow. As always, we'll be back right after the game tomorrow afternoon, recapping all of the action. So stay tuned. Appreciate you all so much for the support. And as always, through the highs and the lows, JETS, 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 Jets.